Hello there friends, and welcome to This Week in Final Fantasy, where I take a quick look at the goings on in the Final Fantasy universe. And with that, let's just jump in. First off, whilst it isn't an announcement or an update about any game in particular, as part of the 30-year anniversary of Final Fantasy, Square Enix released the Timeless Legacy trailer, which shows numerous iconic scenes from Final Fantasy I through 15. All to a progressively more dynamic rendition of the main theme of Final Fantasy. So if you're looking for a warm, fuzzy feeling, make sure to check out the trailer. I shall leave a link to it in the description of the video. So PAX EAST has been in full swing this weekend, and there has been plenty of new information from it regarding Final Fantasy. In fact, the majority of information this week comes from the event. First off, we learnt about the Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age Special Editions. The big one, the Collector's Edition, is at $200, and it includes a real bounty of Final Fantasy XII related paraphernalia. There's an original soundtrack, an exclusive steelbook, busts of the Judge Magisters, a card set which I'm guessing has some sort of fancy art on them, and a code which will allow you to swap between the rearranged and the original version of the soundtracks in-game. Next up is the Steelbook Edition, which has the Steelbook case, obviously, and the ability to swap between the two soundtracks in-game, and that is sitting pretty at $50. This is what I'm going to be opting for. It's the same price as the Standard Edition anyway, and I'm not really a big fan of Collector's Editions in general. I like the artwork and I like the music, but the figures and these busts that always come bundled in don't do much for me, and generally they're what pushes the price of them way up. That and the soundtracks are never the game's full soundtracks anyway, so I will be getting the Steelbook Edition and then buying the original soundtrack separately when it is released. On a related note, a small little tidbit from the world of Final Fantasy. To celebrate the release of the Final Fantasy XII remake later this year, Balthier will become a champion to fight alongside Lan and Rain. He's been given a release date of the 23rd of March, so that's a little something to look forward to there. Let's move on then to Final Fantasy XIV. This week, patch 3.55b dropped, which included the release of the reworked Diadem, which now features fate-based hunting, arguably better objectives, and updated rewards. There's also a dedicated gathering version of the instance, which rewards players for gathering or fishing materials here. The biggest change though is the addition of the emergency missions, which at times appear in the Diadem. At these times, players can enter a Mackie teleporter and find themselves in an almost raid-like area, where they must organise amongst the parties and face off against a number of bosses. The reward for this being a chance at an item level 280 weapon. It's a pink item, and they always have random secondary stats on them, but even accounting for bad secondary stats, these are largely best in slot according to the stat weights the vast majority of us use. And as such, there's been a pretty large backlash from it. Personally, I'm not really sure what all the fuss is about. Sure, the stats might be a little bit better, but for what? We're at the end of the expansion anyway, there's no content that needs item level 280, and it's hidden behind such a horrific wall of RNG that it's unlikely that most of us will get one that we want. It's got little glamour potential, there's no showy off prestige surrounding it, and in June, everything's stats are going to be redundant. I don't love its implementation, but honestly, who cares? I'm not going to lose sleep over it, and you shouldn't either. The hubbub around these item level 280 weapons was so large that at PAX EAST, before Yoshi P's live Q&A, he had to address the issue separately, and his response boils down to, calm down. This segues pretty nicely onto the rest of the news surrounding Final Fantasy XIV. So as I just mentioned, Yoshi did a live Q&A session with audience members. This honestly was pretty uneventful. There was a lot of glamour related questions, some guy asked about his account being banned, and generally I feel there wasn't a large amount of new information. Thankfully though, Gamer Escape had their interview with Yoshi P, which gave us some juicy tidbits. I'll leave a link to the full interview in the description, but I'll just briefly go over what I feel is the good stuff. First off, Yoshi confirmed that unlike Alamigo, which will require some liberation, Doma will be accessible immediately in Stormblood. He told us as well that the Deep Dungeon, the first section of which being Palace of the Dead, will be expanded upon in Stormblood. There will be a new type of loyalty program in the future, one that doesn't just reward people for stocking up a year's worth of sub in advance. The issue of the Proto-Ultima battle being part of the Dunescape raid was also raised, and whether or not this was the original plan for the battle, to which Yoshi responded that Proto-Ultima was never going to be a 24-man trial, and this was always the intention. Reason being, as I said last week, that a separate trial would have little replay value. If you want to hear it all in a bit more detail, remember to go and check the full interview. I will leave a link in the description. From Final Fantasy XV now, we've finally had some real gameplay footage from Episode Gladio, the upcoming DLC arriving on the 28th of March. To me, the gameplay looked very familiar, and yet kind of alien as well. Gladio seems to play largely like Noctis with a heavier weapon, but is far more grounded than our main protagonist. New mechanics based around blocking and building a meter will be introduced, and they've also stated that there will be a lot of replay value to the DLC, since they're adding a score attack type mode. In terms of story, the DLC sees Gladio coming into contact with series regular Gilgamesh, who puts him through trials to test his mettle. Whilst the real emphasis is on the combat, hopefully there will be a little bit more expansion onto Gladio's character as well as Corleonus's, and hopefully Gilgamesh does not disappoint. Finally, all the music appears to be new and it seems to have a very metal feel to it. A trailer for the DLC has also been released, featuring an incredible arrangement of Battle on the Big Bridge, which in a separate announcement we learn has been composed by Eiichi Okabe, the composer for Nier and Nier Automata. Only a couple of weeks left until we can play this, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Moving on, Dissidia Final Fantasy has had its latest character released, this time around being the main antagonist of Final Fantasy II, the Emperor Mateus. Keep the villains coming square. The closer we get to having a balanced cast, the closer I think we get to seeing a release here in the West. Okay, let's move on to the mobile section of the Final Fantasy universe, which, by comparison, has been quite quiet this week. Mobius Final Fantasy saw the release of the Anima multiplayer battle this week, alongside the Berserker Warrior job, and later this week the Pupu Attacks event will make a resurgence. This time it will be called the Pupu Strikes Back. This time around there will be light and dark aspected Pupu, so plenty of farming to be done. Then on the 16th the Ultima Sicarius battle will be released, replacing the Anima battle for the week and refreshing the purchasable items. From Brave Exvius this week, the Gilgamesh trial has been added to the Chamber of the Fallen. Alongside the battle, the summon banner Gilgamesh Vanquishers has been released, which boosts the pull rate of 5 Final Fantasy characters which have famously defeated Gilgamesh. That's Ramza, Snow, Agrius, and of course Exdef and Bart. In addition, the second Type 0 event, Operation MA Demolition, will be ending this week, so make sure you finish up farming on that one. And finally, from Record Keeper, the celebrations for the 2-year anniversary continue. They will be coming to a head in a couple of weeks, I promise. With it, there will be a new minigame to take part in which you attempt to match up the Final Fantasy characters to the number in the series that they originate from. And with it is a collective reward for all players, so go do your part. As for the regular events, Final Fantasy VII Vow Upon a Star, its associated banners and raid dungeons are coming to a close around about now, and the Final Fantasy XIII Of Lies and Love event will be continuing until this time next week. We may start to see events related to the anniversary this week, so keep an eye out for those, because I can tell you now that they're going to be pretty damn juicy. So it's been a pretty long video today, plenty of new stuff as well as lots to look forward to. If you enjoyed the video, you can let me know via a like, comment or subscribe. As always guys, thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.